The boutique was quiet, in the way only expensive places can be, where every step felt too loud, every whisper bounced off marble, and each guest was treated like royalty, assuming they looked the part. The scent of designer leather hung in the air. The lighting was soft but strategic, and the staff moved with the rehearsed grace of runway models. Then she walked in. No entourage. No designer heels, just a simple woman in clean sneakers and a faded coat, with wind-tousled hair and a calm gaze that didn't match the store's usual clientele. She didn't hesitate, didn't peer around nervously. She moved straight toward a rack near the front that held a dress she had seen in a magazine once. Soft gray silk, delicate embroidery, breathtaking in its quiet luxury. But she hadn't even brushed the fabric when a sales associate appeared. "I'm sorry," the woman said with a tone so polished it sliced. "This section is for private clients." The simple woman paused, confused. "I'm just looking." "I understand," the associate said, glancing at the coat, the shoes, the lack of a brand-name bag. "But we're preparing for a private event. Unless you're on the list, I'll have to ask you to leave." No one else was being asked to leave. A blonde in head-to-toe designer walked past with champagne in hand. Another woman tried on heels in the mirror while laughing loudly. But this woman? She was shown the door, politely, firmly, embarrassingly, and as she stepped out into the cold, she didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't even look back. She simply whispered to herself, "He'll see this before sunset," and walked away, just as the boutique made the most expensive mistake of the year. Outside, the wind had picked up, tugging at the corners of her coat as she crossed the street. She didn't glance back at the boutique. She didn't need to. Their reaction was expected, the same condescending dance she had seen play out too many times in places obsessed with appearances. But today, she hadn't come to be noticed. She had come to confirm something. And now, she had all the confirmation she needed. She walked 3 blocks to a quiet cafe and sat near the window, sipping her coffee slowly as she watched the city pulse around her. Her phone remained untouched on the table, screen dark, notifications waiting. She wasn't in a rush. She never was, especially when she already knew what was about to happen. Across the city, in a tall mirrored building lined with black cars and assistants clutching folders, her husband was finishing a meeting. His name, to the public, was synonymous with media, tech, and fashion, an empire built not just on wealth, but on influence. The kind of man who didn't need to walk into a room to own it. He just had to blink, and the room adjusted. The man looked up, unimpressed. "Which location?" "Lexington Avenue. Boutique flagship. A customer was removed, publicly. Our facial recognition software flagged her on exit." There was a beat of silence, and then a slow, chilling realization. "Was it?" "Yes, sir," the executive said. "It was your wife." He didn't shout. He didn't flinch. He simply closed the folder in front of him and stood. "Clear my schedule," he said. "I'll handle it." By the time she finished her coffee, her phone lit up with a single message from him. "You were right. See you at sunset." She smiled. Not because she wanted revenge, because respect was already on its way. As the sun began its slow descent behind the city skyline, casting golden reflections across the glass buildings, quiet preparations were already in motion, ones far beyond the boutique's awareness. The flagship store continued operating like nothing had happened. Staff laughed softly behind the counter. The sales associate who had escorted the woman out earlier was now preparing for a scheduled influencer visit. Another VIP experience meant to generate buzz. But that buzz was about to be rewritten. At 5:42 p.m., just as the streetlights began to flicker on and the evening rush picked up, a large black truck backed into position directly across from the boutique. A few heads turned, curious glances, but no one thought much of it. Deliveries were common in this part of the city. Then, the screen rose. It wasn't just a billboard, it was a digital tower, 5 stories high. And when it powered on, it didn't display perfume ads or celebrity campaigns. It showed a single image, the woman from earlier, his wife, standing in the exact spot where she had been dismissed, her coat still on, the boutique's window blurred behind her. The photo wasn't staged. It wasn't retouched. It was real. The caption read, "She didn't need the store's approval. The store needed her presence." Below it, in bold, unmistakable letters, "New Creative Director, 2025, Amelia Carter." Gasps echoed through the street. Inside the boutique, someone dropped a clipboard. The manager's jaw fell open, because Amelia Carter, once mistaken for someone who didn't belong, was now not only the face of the company's rebranding, she was the company's rebranding. Her husband had done more than respond. He had rewritten the boutique's future. People stopped in the street to take pictures. Passers-by whispered, then cheered. Online, within minutes, the photo went viral. Tweets flooded the timeline. Power move of the year. Never judge a woman by her coat. The woman they kicked out now signs the checks. And inside the store, the sales associate who had turned her away just stood frozen, watching her own reflection in the window, framed now by the woman she had tried to erase. Inside the boutique, the mood shifted from sleek confidence to suffocating panic. What had started as an ordinary day filled with curated playlists and well-rehearsed customer greetings had spiraled into chaos cloaked in silence. No one spoke, yet everyone was thinking the same thing. They had humiliated the woman now plastered across a 5-story billboard. The store managers scrambled to make calls, fingers trembling as she dialed corporate numbers that suddenly rang too long. The associate who had dismissed Amelia earlier retreated to the back room, clutching her phone and scrolling frantically through social media where her actions had already become a trending topic. A single clip, surveillance footage of the moment she escorted Amelia out, had leaked, and commenters were ruthless. "Imagine kicking out the CEO's wife. She's more graceful than I would have been. She's a walking lesson in staying calm. And Amelia? She didn't need to speak. She never posted. Never responded. Her silence was her signature." Meanwhile, across town, her husband was finishing a press release. In it, he announced not just her appointment as creative director, but the complete overhaul of the boutique's identity, from its marketing strategy to its staff training philosophy. "We are redefining elegance," the headline read, "by honoring those with vision, not just those with privilege." Within hours, fashion blogs exploded with the news. Designers who had never acknowledged Amelia before were now sending flowers. Influencers changed their tune, posting throwback selfies and pretending they'd always admired her quiet style. But Amelia didn't respond to any of it. She had no interest in being praised by the same voices that had once ignored her. That night, the store remained open, but barely anyone entered. Customers stood outside, staring up at the billboard in awe while pretending to scroll their phones. Employees inside stood stiff behind counters, wondering if they would still have jobs come morning. And in a penthouse not far away, Amelia poured herself a cup of tea. She sat on the balcony overlooking the very street where her image now towered above the city. Her husband joined her, handing her a blanket for the chill. "They're calling you the new face of the brand," he said. She smiled softly, without looking away from the view. "I didn't change anything. I've always been this." "No," he said, watching her. "They just finally opened their eyes." She didn't respond. She didn't need to. The next day, the boutique's doors opened to a different kind of customer. Gone were the shallow smiles and overposed selfies. Instead, women walked in with curiosity and a quiet sense of reverence. Not because of the expensive handbags or trending designs, but because the woman whose image still lit up the block had become a symbol. She wasn't just the face. That afternoon, the boutique hosted an emergency staff meeting. Corporate had flown in. The mood was tight. The manager stood stiffly beside a sharply dressed executive who explained, without theatrics, that the company would be undergoing cultural realignment. But no one needed clarification. They all knew this was Amelia's ripple effect. Outside, journalists gathered, hoping for a glimpse of her. Bloggers waited with their cameras ready, and just before sunset she arrived, not in a limo, not with bodyguards, but walking quietly next to her husband, their fingers loosely intertwined. The staff lined up nervously as the couple entered. No one said a word. Amelia didn't offer anger. She didn't demand apologies. Instead, she walked through the store with calm purpose, occasionally stopping to run her hand across a dress or lift the hem of a blouse, as if checking whether the store still understood beauty. At the back, near the counter, where she'd once been judged, she paused and looked up. "This could be more than a store," she said quietly, addressing no one in particular, "but only if it sees more than the surface." The executive from corporate nodded immediately. "Absolutely, that's what we're here to build. With you." And just like that, it became clear. This wasn't a publicity stunt. It was a pivot, a recalibration, not just of the brand, but of what it meant to belong somewhere that once refused to let you in. As they left, the same sales associate who had turned her away the day before managed to whisper, "I'm sorry." Amelia turned to her gently and replied, "Then learn from it. No anger, no lecture, just a choice, to rise higher and invite others to do the same." Weeks passed, but the story never faded. What started as a quiet act of exclusion became a global conversation about judgment, image, power, and grace. The boutique, once known only to the elite, was now a symbol of redemption. But more importantly, it had become a reflection of the woman who never raised her voice, yet managed to be heard louder than any headline. Amelia didn't do interviews. She didn't attend red carpets. Instead, she went to work, quietly reimagining the boutique's next collection. Her designs weren't just clothing. They were statements, stitched with meaning. One dress was named "The Look Back," another, "Mistaken Identity," and one simply titled "Exit," gracefully. Each item told a piece of her story, not with words, but with fabric. Sales skyrocketed. People didn't just want the clothes, they wanted the confidence that came with them. Young girls, first-time customers, and women who had been made to feel invisible all found something in the new line, something that made them feel seen. The billboard eventually came down, but no one forgot it. It had already done its work. One morning, Amelia sat in her studio, sipping tea as always. A letter arrived, handwritten, no return address. Inside was a short note from an anonymous staffer who had been working the day she was turned away. It read, "Thank you for teaching me what class really looks like. I thought I was dressing people in elegance. I now know I was only dressing their ego." She folded the letter, tucked it into her journal, and looked out the window. Her husband walked in moments later and smiled at the sight of her, as if every day he was reminded of what the world had nearly overlooked. "You still don't wear any of your own designs," he teased. She smiled, eyes soft. "I don't need to." Because she had become the brand, not through fame or force, but through quiet strength, dignity, and the kind of power that doesn't come from money, but from knowing exactly who you are, even when no one else sees it yet.